Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Extra Time TV. This is Andres Soklal, and I'm once again joined by a man who does not need any introduction, but I'm going to give him one anyway. EspnFC's Shaka Hislop. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Andre. How are you?
All right, so it's always a pleasure to have you on the show. You're a national hero for us. So, keep representing Trinidad on the world stage. No longer a footballer, but at the ESPN level, which is a huge honor as always.
Thank you.
All right. So with that being said, everybody's talking about the Neymar transfer and the ridiculous transfer fee. It's reportedly, and that's not even an accurate figure, it's around 223 million apparently. But you have varying reports all over the place. Even people reporting that it may cost PSG as much as, in addition to the transfer, as much as 500, which includes the salaries and so on. A lot of people, they have a lot to say. I mean, Neymar is a popular Brazilian figure playing alongside Messi and Suarez. What do you think about the large transfer fees? Are the transfers going too far now, Shaka?
I'm starting to think so. And I mean, there's a number of ways to look at the transfer fee and how much PSG will be paying in total in a number of ways. On the one hand, the CIES Football Observatory, who, despite their relationship with FIFA and being based in Zurich, conduct independent, or as they put it, independent research and valuations in players. And they valued Neymar at some 210 million euros. So on the face of it, paying 222 million for PSG isn't overspending by a whole lot. That's what a 6% increase on CIES own valuation. But as you mentioned, again, there are a number of different aspects and layers to what PSG will eventually pay. They pay Barcelona 223 million euros, but because they activated a buyout clause, PSG will also have to pay the tax on that to the Spanish authorities. That will be somewhere around 70 million euros. And then Neymar will command somewhere around 50 million euros a year in salary. That's 30 million net. So again, given the French tax laws, you're looking at about 50 million for PSG to pay. Add in agents' fees, etc., over the course of 5 years. Yes, that is €500 million that PSG will be paying. Now, I'm not sure how PSG justify or make that case to the UEFA authorities in terms of financial fair play. Again, there's a number of ways to look at this, and then, as Ali Moreno puts it on EspnFC, PSG wanted a seat at the big boy table, and they had to pay for that. A lot of noise has been made about the number of shirt sales. Say in the opening 24 hours, some 10,000 shirts were sold. Again, that is just a statistic that has no bearing on the transfer fee, and for a number of reasons. PSG signed a new contract with Nike as their kit supplier back in 2013. At the time, it was a 10-year deal valued at some 20 to 25 million euros a year. There's different reports, and nobody knows for certain exactly what the details of that would be. But Nike will take somewhere between 75 and 100% of those sales. So really, PSG don't get anything by way of payments in terms of the number of Neymar shirts sold. The Nike contract is up. Nike PSG contract is up for renegotiation in 2022. So of course, Nike would want to leave that for as late as possible. PSG would want to start those negotiations as soon as possible. But I don't expect an announcement in that regard for at least another 2 years, 2.5 years. And then maybe we'll see if Nike are prepared to pay the kind of money that PSG quite clearly think they are deserving of. And a lot will be told in the next couple of years in that regard. How well they do in Liga, how well shirt sales go otherwise, how well they do in the Champions League. So I feel like there's still a lot up in the air in terms of PSG justifying €500 million on a single player.
Yep, because you brought up an interesting point with player valuations. There's a former baseball player, Billy Bean, and there's an entire movie based. It's in another sport, but the concept is the same with the evaluation of players and how assigning a financial figure or a value to a player is something that a lot of people. Arsene Wenger is a guy who has a very specific way he judges players, which is something he gets criticized for because he doesn't win trophies. But it's something I begrudgingly admire. But unfortunately, we live in a world where you judge by what you win. And Arsene Wenger has decided he's not going to do that to his own detriment. Neymar costing this figure. What it does is, Jose Mourinho also made an interesting statement about when you are paying this amount of money for players. This is not the exact quote, of course, that now you have average players, their prices are being inflated and costing a lot of money. And do you think that that's a consequence of clubs like PSG and the Chelseas and the Man Cities, of their ambition to become great or elite, that it also causes a vacuum effect?
Without question. I mean, you saw that. On the one hand, you could say that Jose Mourinho and Roman Abramovich kind of started this trend way back when in the Chelsea days. But the market caught up, and as a matter of fact, the Premier League benefited by that early spending from Jose Mourinho. So, maybe there is something to this after all for PSG, where the other League R clubs will certainly benefit. So there's no question to that. Also, yes, other players will be overvalued as a result. Just right now the talk is, and we're waiting. You kind of wait and see what happens. Philippe Coutinho moving from Liverpool to Barcelona for in excess of 100 million euros. Now, Philippe Coutinho is not a 100 million euro player. He's good, but not at 100 million euros. Especially coming off this season that he had, as much as Liverpool finished in the top four and we played Champions League football. Let's also remember that Coutinho himself was out for some spells with injury. When he came back, didn't really find great form to start with. So it probably was Coutinho's arguably worst 12 months as a Liverpool player. Yet, here we are talking about paying more than Real paid for Cristiano Ronaldo, more than Real paid for Gareth Bale, more than Manchester United paid for Paul Pogba. For a player coming off, arguably, without question, not his best season in a Liverpool shirt. And that is in response to the Neymar price tag, no question.
And a lot of people, football, the fans have the luxury of saying certain things because they are, for lack of a better expression, football romantics. They could sit and say, oh, it's all about the money. These players are making moves because of the money. And, it's easy to, sit maybe on the sidelines or on the couches and say, these guys are just doing it for the money. But, it's a business. It's a very vicious business now because it's all about winning. Winning requires a certain amount of financial input now. As you said, Chelsea and those Abramovich and those guys started that. As if you look at China, a lot of money is being spent with those guys being sent across there. And does it mean that spending this amount of money, we're just using Neymar as a reference point, but does that amount of money justify automatically equate to success? Do you think so? Because a lot of teams, for example, Malaga, a couple of years ago in Spain, they had a massive takeover. They bought a whole bunch of players. Investors pulled out. Nobody hears about Malaga anymore. Pellegrini and the entire team just dispersed. So is that something that, just to go back to the original question, does it guarantee proper success?
No, it doesn't. I feel a club has to be set up for that long-term success. It's very easy to have short-term spending and make a short-term splash. It's another to have that translate into some kind of long-term standing, which is why UEFA introduced financial fair play, because their concern was you had these mega rich owners coming in, spending money, and then the clubs have to carry that debt. For instance, as much as I spoke about Abramovich, and as good as he's been for not just Chelsea but the English Premier League, a lot of his investment in the Chelsea Football Club he has now labelled as a loan. So he has some 800 million, nearly a billion pounds in loans to Chelsea Football Club. Now, if Abramovich decides that he wants to walk away and somebody wants to come in and buy Chelsea Football Club, you have to buy not only what is the club's valuation, but you have to add another £1 billion on top of that just to satisfy the debt that they owe to Roman Abramovich alone. Now, again, I agree with you, but that can't be a good thing for the game in the long term. I think it's easier for other clubs to absorb that kind of spending, that kind of huge investment, huge long-term investment, because they have the commercial foundations to support it. Clubs like Real Madrid, like Barcelona, like Manchester United, and even now like Chelsea can support that kind of expenditure just because of their standing in the global game. And that's the hope for PSG here. The trouble is, as we sit right now, even with this spending, even if PSG will to single-handedly kind of keep League 1 afloat and raise its standing in the global market, I don't see the French league surpassing Spain or England or Germany or even Italy in terms of international appeal. So how does that translate into shirt sales, into TV revenues, into just balancing your books, quite simply, into when the Qatari owners of PSG decide that they're no longer interested in funding PSG to this level? What do they do? Do they walk away with leaving huge a huge wage bill? Do they walk away leaving huge debts? Those are long-term questions that as we sit, nobody can answer. Now it's great as a fan because we aren't putting our hands in our pockets. We aren't spending that 250 million euros or whatever it is. You still have to buy a ticket to get into the game, and that's about it. You buy a shirt or two or whatever it may be. But I think that there are bigger long-term questions that need to be addressed. That for the romance of the game, I don't think is being addressed properly.
Yep, I agree, because you made several key points. We've seen examples of this, as I mentioned before, Malaga, teams in Italy like Parma and so on. Even it may not be the same scale, but for example, Leeds a couple of years ago, Malaga. So we've seen the downside of when the investors get bored and decide, I'm done. I'm done playing fantasy football. I'm going to go do some other investments, and all of a sudden the clubs are in major problems. Some of them get relegated. Some of them even disperse and dissolve and have to come back as a new team. We hear about the high profile teams, some of the smaller ones. But just to narrow it down back to Neymar, well, you actually beat me to another question, because it's the ramifications of something like this for world football. The fans may not see it. For people who are involved in the business of football, the mid-level to lower clubs in Spain, their structure is different from in England. It's not distributed equally. Will it really basically make the strong teams super strong, and the competitiveness and what we like about the game will just eventually dissolve? And that's just one example.
I think yes, there's a growing difference between the haves and the have-nots in the world game. I still feel that the game continues to be as exciting and as attractive to fans, regardless of who you support, whether it's one of the top clubs or not, as ever. And that's kind of reflective in the TV revenues and the TV audiences that you get. So that for me isn't a major concern. And you understand, listen, PSG are worried about PSG. They're not necessarily worried about teams, lower down in the French league, and they certainly couldn't care less about a mid-table Premier League team and whether they're able to afford the players that they want to bring in or not. So you have to accept that aspect of it as well. But the game will continue to thrive. My biggest concern has always been that the divide between the haves and the have-nots grows so large that, and the debts that the haves kind of incur and take on means that we're moving towards a kind of either European Super League or a global Super League. There's been less talk of that over recent years, but I still have a feeling that may be something that these owners are thinking about down the line. And that, I think, will be awful for football on a global scale.
Yes, I actually agree with you. I think it may dilute some of the competitiveness that is taking place. Some of the, I shouldn't say legends, but the history of what UEFA and South America. The FIFA World Club Cup is an example of that. I think it hasn't really. I don't think they really hit the mark with that as well. I think I understand what they were trying to do, And I think that's maybe a consequence of them trying to, you know, streamline everything because of the exposure of the game and the amount of money that's being pumped into it, the knowledge of the fan base. People are aware of the amount of money being spent. But, you know, back to the evaluation of players. I mean, I did an entire thesis on this where evaluation of players is something that's very, you know, it's not a set science then. You know, the KPIs used to evaluate players were in the 90s, 40 million, 60 million was outrageous back then. Of course, due to the economic climate that has changed, the value of the dollar and the currency has changed. But, you know, where do you draw the line? Where do you say, okay, listen, you know, that's ridiculous. You know, that player, Coutinho as an example, even Gareth Bale, I have some issues with how much he cost Real Madrid because these guys have the money. You know, where's the line crossed? You mentioned the evaluation committee. You know, the criteria is insane. I can understand a Messi, I can understand a Ronaldo, but even then, a line needs to be crossed drawn at some point.
I think the only line that you can draw is in the club's own, you know, revenue streams themselves and how they're able to justify it, and ensuring that they're able to balance the books. And I keep going back to UEFA's financial fair play as being a good starting point. Of course, I think a lot of the regulations are being abused quite clearly, but it is a good starting point that needs to be embraced a little bit more. That needs to have stronger resolutions in terms of punishing clubs and making sure they stick to the described guidelines. But that for me is where I think UEFA can have a lasting impact on the game.
Well, you know, just to kind of round it off, specifically Neymar. So we know the amount of money that's spent on this guy. A lot is expected. We saw it, a high-profile case, although there are many cases. We saw it with Fernando Torres when he made a jump from Liverpool to Chelsea. The weight of expectation, people knew what he cost. We live in a very educated, or I should say more exposed football public now. People know what's going on. They know, hey, Neymar, the cost, the salary, you could just go online and find that stuff now. So what is the criteria for failure? You know, what is expected of Neymar? Is it the Champions League? Is it winning, you know, back-to-back Champions League titles? You know, what do you think is the criteria to decide if that transfer fails or it's a success? Because we live in a very fickle world.
Right now, I'm not sure because, I mean, let's be honest, the bar for PSG is right now, without Neymar, is you know, expect them, if not hope, that they win the French league, which it didn't last season. And I think given their spending, at the very least, a semi-final berth at the Champions League. But again, that comes down to draw. You know, even if you top your group in the group stage of the Champions League, the first knockout round is seeded. After that, it's who you're drawn against. As we said, even with Neymar, I don't think PSG are better than Real Madrid. I don't think they're better than Barcelona. People should have knocked Barcelona out earlier this year. And I don't think they're better than Bayern Munich. I'm probably go so far as to say I'm not so sure that they're better than Juventus. Again, time will tell as to how Neymar settles in, how he transforms this team, and the kind of confidence they get as a result of Neymar being in that dressing room. But that for me is where the bar is. If we win French League, that should be a foregone conclusion with or without Neymar. Semi-final berth in the Champions League, and certainly by the end of this 5-year deal, if PSG do not win the Champions League, we have to say it's an expensive experiment going wrong.
Yep. You know, strictly from a sporting perspective, you know, just to round things off, you know, do you think it was a good move for Neymar from a sporting perspective? And do you think, as just to build on what you said there, do you think he is the guy, that go-to guy like of Barcelona? Messi is the reference point there. Do you think he is the guy to take PSG to the next level? Because before, when Ronaldinho and Eto'o and those guys were there were guys like Giovanni Dos Santos who were very talented, and their logic for making their moves is that they were under the shadow of Ronaldinho at the time and those guys. And it didn't really pan out so well. His career sort of flatlined after that. He went with a lot of expectation in Tottenham. Do you think Neymar is a guy? We've seen with Brazil, he has the capability, but do you think he is the guy from us? Was it the right move? And do you think he's the right guy to really take PSG to that level that we spoke about?
Well, I'll answer the second part of that question first. I think PSG, what they've done is they've kind of taken a leaf out of the playbook from Real Madrid in particular,
Yeah.
who bring in the best players in the world, be it Cristiano Ronaldo or Zinedine Zidane, and build a team around that player. And yes, it absolutely has worked for Real Madrid. So in that regard, PSG has done the right thing in terms of building themselves into one of Europe's great clubs, one of Europe's great super clubs, for the long term. So I fully understand what they did and why they did it. For Neymar, I'm a little bit more uncertain. I felt he was at the right club at Barcelona. I thought he had everything he needed in terms of support. Lionel Messi just crossed 30. Neymar just crossed 25. But Lionel Messi, as happens to everybody who crosses 30, eventually your powers start to fade. And I felt that Neymar would be the heir apparent. And within 2 or 3 years, he would be the man to inherit that mantle from Lionel Messi. But understandably as well, Neymar feels his time is now. So maybe it is a case for him to step away and if you are going to step away from a club like Barcelona with everything that they have to offer and take a chance on yourself, there's no better place to do it than PSG, given not just their spending on you individually, but certainly what they've done in years gone by, and I'm sure what they promised that they will be doing in years to come. So it's a good gamble in that regard. But again, for me, I still feel he was the right place. Maybe not absolutely the right time. I felt that right time would have been another 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, I a lot of people are weighing in on the opinion that Neymar, just cashed in. But, this is a discussion I could go on for really, really long because there's so many ways you could look at this. So, Shaka, it's always been a pleasure. It's always great to have a chat with somebody as informed as yourself and a personal hero of ours on the show. So it's a double bonus for us.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Okay, guys, so that wraps things up of this episode of Extra Time TV. Be sure to tune in next time and like and subscribe. Check us out below.